Imagine discovering an ancient blueprint. Not for building your machine, but for accelerating your own spiritual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
What if there was a science, maybe refined over millennia, that offered like a direct route to inner peace and profound self-understanding?
Yeah.
That's really the promise at the heart of Kriya Yoga.
And it's exactly this powerful, really intriguing possibility that, caught our attention in the comprehensive report you shared with us.
Right.
Kriya Yoga is a term I think many people have encountered, maybe linked to stories of yogis in the Himalayas or transformative experiences.
Sure, you're the name.
But it often feels a bit elusive, doesn't it? Kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
What is this practice, this philosophy really all about?
Yeah, exactly. What's under the hood?
Yeah.
That's the core question we really wanted to tackle. So
Yep.
Armed with your incredibly detailed report and the supporting sources you put together for us.
Which were great, by the way. Really thorough.
Fantastic. So we dedicated this deep dive to cutting through any, potential confusion.
Mm.
Our mission here is to extract the most important, the most illuminating insights, making this rich, complex spiritual science clear, understandable, and really importantly, relevant for you.
Mm-hmm.
Think of this as like your curated shortcut to understanding Kriya Yoga from the ground up.
And it's a subject that I think really demands a deep look because it claims to offer something quite radical, a direct, almost scientific approach to something often seen as purely mystical or, just devotional.
Absolutely. It bridges that gap, supposedly. Okay, let's unpack this together. We're diving deep into Kriya Yoga.
Let's do it.
So, let's start with the basics, the fundamental definition that we found in the sources. What is Kriya Yoga at its core?
Well, it's described primarily as a highly advanced, comprehensive spiritual system. That's the key phrase.
Comprehensive. Okay. And what does it use? What are the tools?
It utilizes this powerful synergy of specific practices. You've got pranayama, which is basically conscious control of the life force or breath energy.
Right, the breath connection.
Then there's mantra, which involves sacred sound or vibration, and mudra, which are specific psychophysical gestures or seals.
These aren't just random things thrown together.
Not at all. They're integrated very specifically for a singular, really ambitious goal, achieving rapid spiritual development.
Rapid, okay, that's a key word.
Definitely. And ultimately leading to a state of deep tranquility and conscious union with the divine, often called God communion.
Okay, so union with the infinite. Now, you mentioned it's a system, not just one thing.
Yeah, and that's absolutely crucial to grasp right from the start. The sources really emphasize this is far more than just, a single exercise you might add to your morning routine.
Right.
The report highlights this dual nature. Yes, there is a core Kriya technique, and that's presented as the engine kind of driving this rapid transformation.
The powerhouse.
Exactly. And this is but this technique is nested within and really inseparable from a complete spiritual path.
Ah, okay, so it's holistic.
Totally. It means foundational elements like ethical living, principles of right conduct, self-discipline, the yamas and niyamas of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And also preliminary preparatory practices are absolutely essential. They're not optional extras.
Right. So you can't just jump into the deep end, basically.
No, exactly. The system seems to have this built-in structure that requires a period of study and purification, like getting your spiritual bearings first.
Building the foundation.
And building that foundational strength, before you can even be initiated into the primary Kriya action itself.
I see. So the central practice is really the peak, the culmination.
It's the culmination, the most potent element, but it sits within this broader integrated approach to life and consciousness. And it's designed to integrate with your daily life, not just be something you do on a retreat once a year.
Makes sense. Practical spirituality.
Yeah, that seems to be the aim. And the name itself, Kriya Yoga, actually gives us a lot of insight into its nature.
Okay, let's break that down. Kriya.
So Kriya comes from the Sanskrit root Kri. And Kri means to do, to act, and react.
Okay, action.
Action. And interestingly, this is the very same root from which the word karma is derived. The law of cause and effect, action and reaction.
Ah, interesting connection. So Kriya Yoga translates to...
It's often translated as union, that's the yoga part, with the infinite through a certain action or rite.
Union through action, got it. But not just any action, right?
No, definitely not just washing the dishes, although that can be yogic too. The sources are very clear. This is a specific, sacred, internal purificatory rite, or sadhana.
Internal. Oh.
Yes. They contrast this quite deliberately with external rituals or ceremonies you might perform outside yourself. There's this really beautiful description of it as an inner fire rite.
Inner fire rite. Tell me more.
It's like an internalized form of the ancient Vedic fire sacrifice, the yajna, but instead of offering, grains or butter into an external physical fire, the practitioner offers their desires, their attachments, their ego-bound tendencies, metaphorically speaking, into an internal fire of divine love and spiritual striving.
Wow. So the action is happening within your own consciousness and energy system?
Exactly. It's an internal transformation fueled by this specific inner action.
Okay. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda, who we'll heavily talk more about later, he had a specific way of describing it, didn't he?
He did. He frequently described Kriya Yoga as a simple psychophysiological method. That specific phrase is quite revealing.
Psychophysiological. Okay, what does that point to?
It points to this core philosophy, the really profound connection between human consciousness, the spine, and the nervous system.
The mind-body connection, maybe deeper.
Deeper, yes. This entire system, both the gross physical body and the subtle energy body, is seen as animated by prana, the vital life force.
Prana, okay.
And the Kriya teachings propose that controlling this life force, this prana, is actually the key to controlling the mind and accessing higher states of awareness. It works on the root cause, so to speak.
Interesting. So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about managing the energy behind the thoughts.
That seems to be the core idea, and this leads directly into the mechanism, or at least the simplified explanation given in the sources of how the core technique is actually said to work on this psychophysiological system.
Okay. How does it work?
So the primary practice involves a specialized form of breath and attention control. Through this specific technique, the practitioner is said to dramatically decarbonize the blood.
Decarbonize, meaning clearing out carbon dioxide.
Exactly, clearing out CO2, and at the same time, saturating the blood with a significantly higher amount of oxygen than usual.
Okay, more oxygen in the blood.
But here's the yogic twist. According to the teachings, this enriched oxygen isn't just, for your physical lungs or muscles. It's actually transmuted into a subtle but very potent life current.
Life current, like a refined form of energy.
That's the idea, a subtle energy. And this current is then consciously revolved or directed by the practitioner to revitalize the brain and, crucially, the subtle energy centers along the spine, the ones known as the chakras.
The chakras. So it directly works on those energy centers.
That's the claim. And by working with this specific energy flow, the practice is said to counteract the accumulation of venous blood, which apparently contributes to tissue decay.
So it has health benefits, too, potentially slowing down aging.
That's implied, yes. Lessening tissue decay. And then at very advanced stages, and this is a truly incredible claim mentioned in the sources, practitioners might even be able to transmute their physical cells into pure energy.
Wow. Okay, that's a big claim, transmuting cells into energy.
It is. It points to the ultimate potential ascribed to the practice when mastered.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that Kriya promises rapid spiritual development. This mechanism you just described, is that why it's considered so fast?
Exactly. Here's where that promise of acceleration really kicks in. And yeah, it gets really interesting. This idea of direct scientific control over the life force is precisely why Kriya Yoga is considered so incredibly efficient.
And Yogananda had that analogy, right? The famous one.
Yes, the famous airplane route analogy. He contrasted Kriya sharply with what he called the slower bullet cart route of paths that rely purely on theology or maybe just devotion without this energetic component.
So Kriya is the jet plane. Other paths are the slow cart.
Yeah.
Why the difference in speed?
That analogy perfectly captures the reported efficiency. It's presented as being so direct because it works fundamentally with prana, that energy underlying both the body and the mind.
Right.
So instead of just trying to, say, wrestle the restless mind into submission through concentration alone, which can feel like a constant battle,
Yeah, tell me about it.
Kriya is said to directly control the vital force that animates those thoughts and emotions in the first place.
Going to the source of the restlessness.
Exactly. You calm the energy, and the mind calms automatically. This focused action on the energy system is claimed to produce a vastly accelerated rate of spiritual evolution compared to methods that maybe don't engage with prana in this specific, potent way.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Cut off the fuel supply, the engine quiets down.
That's a good way to put it. And the sources provide that really remarkable specific claim that definitely serves as a powerful aha moment for anyone looking for rapid spiritual progress.
What's the specific claim?
Yogananda stated, and this is quite precise, that a single half-minute Kriya technique, when performed correctly,
Half a minute?
yes, just half a minute, affects subtle progress in the practitioner's evolution, equivalent to 1 full year of natural spiritual unfoldment achieved through less direct methods.
Wow. Okay, wait. Half a minute equals a year of natural progress?
That's the claim. Think about that for a second. Half a minute potentially compressing a year of slower progress.
That's staggering.
It is. And while it's a profound claim and, might seem unbelievable at first glance, it really highlights the core promise and the perceived power of this method. It's presented almost as a spiritual technology, a science for dramatically speeding up the journey toward self-realization.
So this description, it sounds almost like spiritual engineering, incredibly potent. But the sources are clear. This isn't some new invention, right?
Not at all. They firmly position Kriya Yoga not as a new technique someone just dreamed up, but as a revival of an ancient, timeless truth.
The revival.
Yes. It's spoken of as a science that was known in deep antiquity, but had been essentially lost to the general world for many centuries. It became, the guarded secret of just a few renunciates or mystics hidden away.
Okay, so ancient roots. Where do these roots lie?
Deep within the bedrock of ancient Indian spiritual tradition. The teachings themselves are considered eternal, known to the original Indian seers, the rishis, who are said to have intuited these cosmic laws through direct experience.
And there are specific scriptural mentions.
The lineage asserts that, yes, the essence of this science was referred to by Lord Krishna in the ancient epic, the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, the Gita. That's huge.
It is, and also by the great sage Patanjali in his foundational text on yoga, the Yoga Sutras.
Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, another cornerstone.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look closer at that Bhagavad Gita connection. Are there specific verses?
Yes, the sources cite specific verses. They point particularly to chapter 4, verse 29, and also chapter 5, verses 27-28.
Okay, what do they say? What's the connection?
Well, verse IV.21, for example, talks about certain yogis who offer the inhaling breath, prana, into the exhaling breath, apana, and vice versa. And through this specific process, the yogi learns to neutralize both these breaths, thereby gaining control over the life force.
Neutralizing the breaths. Prana and apana.
Exactly. This concept of neutralizing the dual currents of prana, the incoming life force, and apana, the outgoing or eliminating force, is presented as the absolute foundational scientific principle upon which the Kriya technique is built.
So the Gita contains the hidden science.
It's framed that way, yes. Not just as abstract philosophy, but as a fundamental yogic science implicitly described in this widely revered scripture. By balancing and calming these two opposing energy flows, the outward rush of life force is naturally withdrawn inward towards the spine.
Okay, fascinating. And the sources mentioned it wasn't just known in India.
Correct. Expanding its scope even further, the sources highlight the teaching that this universal science was also known to Jesus Christ and his closest disciples, like St. John and St. Paul.
Wow, okay. So Christ knew Kriya Yoga.
That's the teaching within this lineage. And this particular point really underscores the core belief held by the Kriya masters, that Kriya Yoga is a universal, non-sectarian path. It's a direct method for God realization that transcends specific religious dogma.
So it's not Hindu, not Christian, but the science behind true religion.
That's how it's presented, a unifying science available to all sincere seekers, whatever their faith background might be.
Now, you mentioned Patanjali earlier. There's a potential point of confusion there, right?
Yeah.
Because Patanjali does define Kriya Yoga in the sutras.
Yes, exactly. And that's a crucial clarification needed. In the Yoga Sutras, specifically in the second chapter, Sutra 2.1, Patanjali defines Kriya Yoga, but his definition is quite different at first glance. It's more philosophical.
How does he define it?
He lists 3 core principles. Kapha, which means austerity or self-discipline, fiery effort.
Tapa, okay.
Svadhyaya, which means self-study or study of sacred texts, understanding oneself.
Kodaya.
And Ishvara Pranadhana, which means surrender or devotion to God or the Supreme Being.
Okay, so discipline, self-study, surrender. That sounds like a general path for yoga.
It is. It's presented as a foundational threefold path for any serious yoga practice.
So how does that connect to the specific pranayama technique that Lahiri Mahasaya brought forth? They seem different.
They do seem different initially. However, the sources, particularly through Yogananda's explanations, frame this not as a contradiction at all, but actually as a profound synthesis.
A synthesis. How so?
Yogananda explained that Lahiri Mahasaya's specific Kriya Pranayama technique fits within Patanjali's philosophical definition. He taught that the practice of the Kriya technique itself is actually the highest and most concentrated form of Patanjali's 3 principles.
Really? How does that work?
Well, the Kriya practice, with its focus on internal energy and purification, is the ultimate internal fire rite that's tapa.
Okay, the inner fire.
Because it stills the mind so effectively, it leads directly to intuitive perception of the self and truth, going beyond books that's svadhyaya in its deepest sense.
Direct self-knowing.
And because it dissolves the ego and connects the practitioner directly with the divine presence within, it culminates in conscious union with God. That's Ishvara Pranadhanam.
Wow. Okay, so the technique embodies the philosophy.
Exactly. This perspective beautifully bridges the ancient philosophical path laid out by Patanjali with the powerful, specific modern technique revived by Lahiri Mahasaya. It shows the technique isn't separate from the tradition, but its highest expression.
That's a really elegant connection. It grounds the technique historically and philosophically.
It does. And speaking of its reemergence, the actual story of the modern revival is pretty dramatic and absolutely central to understanding Kriya Yoga today. The sources pinpoint a very specific, pivotal event in the year 1861.
1861. Okay, what happened?
Yes. This is described as the precise moment the lost science was restored to the world stage. It involves a man named Shyama Charan Lahiri. He was 33 years old at the time, working as an accountant for the British government in India.
An accountant,
Not
a renunciate monk.
No, an ordinary householder, an accountant. He was transferred for work to a remote area up in the Himalayas near a place called Raniket.
Okay, up in the mountains.
And while walking one day in the serene Drawangiri Mountains there, he suddenly heard a voice calling his name from somewhere above him.
A voice from the mountains.
Yes. Following the sound, he climbed higher and eventually encountered this radiant young man. This being revealed himself not only as a divine entity, but as Lahiri's own guru from many, many past incarnations. This was the immortal Mahavatar Babaji.
Mahavatar Babaji.
Yeah.
Legendary, deathless avatar.
The very same. He's described as embodying constant communion with the divine. And this meeting wasn't accidental. It's described as a divinely preordained reunion.
So Babaji found him again, and what happened?
In this extraordinary meeting, Babaji reinitiated Lahiri Mahasaya into the ancient, long-lost science of Kriya Yoga. He essentially downloaded the technique back into him.
Wow, just like that.
And the sources include this incredibly powerful quote attributed to Babaji during that encounter. Babaji apparently said, "The Kriya Yoga that I am giving to the world through you in this 19th century is a revival of the same science that Krishna gave millenniums ago to Arjuna and was later known to Patanjali and Christ and to St. John, St. Paul, and other disciples."
That's the statement right there, linking it all together.
It's the cornerstone of the Lineage's claim. It directly connects the technique revived in 1861 to ancient scripture, to Patanjali, and even to Christ, asserting its timelessness and universal nature.
Incredible. And Babaji didn't just give him the technique, he gave him instructions, right?
Crucially, yes. He gave Lahiri Mahasaya a truly revolutionary instruction. unlike the ancient tradition where yogis typically had to renounce the world, live in seclusion to practice such advanced techniques.
Right, become monks or hermits.
Babaji specifically commanded Lahiri Mahasaya to return to his everyday life as a householder, living in the city of Benares.
Return to his family and job.
Yes, and not only to return, but to actively initiate other sincere seekers into Kriya Yoga.
Initiate others while living a normal life.
Exactly, and here's the really radical part. Babaji instructed him to initiate people regardless of their social status, their caste, or their religious background.
That was revolutionary for that time in India.
Hugely revolutionary. Apparently, at Lahiri Mahasaya's own humble request, Babaji specifically relaxed the ancient, very rigid rules of discipleship that had previously guarded these techniques so closely.
Relax the rules. How?
By making initiation accessible to ordinary people, householders with families and jobs, men and women, people from all walks of life and all faiths for the first time in perhaps centuries.
Wow. So he basically opened the gates.
He opened the gates. This was a monumental shift. It essentially democratized the path to yogic liberation. It made direct spiritual experience potentially available to anyone willing to sincerely apply the technique.
Not just those who could formally renounce the world.
Precisely. That 1861 meeting wasn't just about rediscovering a technique. It was about adapting it and making it available for the specific needs of the modern age, where so many people are deeply engaged in worldly life but still have that profound yearning for deep spiritual connection.
Making ancient wisdom practical for today.
That seems to be the essence of it. And that need for modern accessibility is a thread you see running through the entire lineage that followed.
Okay, so speaking of the lineage, the sources place a huge amount of importance on this concept of guru parampara, right? The unbroken succession.
Immense importance, yes. An unbroken succession of masters and disciples. And this isn't just, about keeping a neat historical record. It's considered absolutely essential.
Essential for what?
For preserving the purity of the teachings, for one, but maybe even more importantly, for preserving the subtle energetic transmission that's said to accompany the initiation.
Ah, the Shaktipat we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The initiation into Kriya Yoga isn't presented as merely an intellectual transfer of information, like learning from a book or a manual. It's described as involving the subtle transfer of spiritual consciousness and energy.
Like passing a flame.
Yeah, like a spiritual mantle or a specific vibration passed down through this unbroken chain. This is why receiving initiation from an authorized representative of an authentic lineage is considered absolutely indispensable. You need that connection.
Okay, and the lineage itself, the sequence of masters, is seen as having a purpose.
Very much so. It's often described as a divinely orchestrated plan, like a deliberate strategy of progressive revelation.
Progressive revelation, meaning?
Meaning each master in the line played a distinct, specific role in adapting and spreading the Kriya science further, making it suitable for the evolving global consciousness of their time.
So, Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda, they each had a specific job.
That's exactly how it's presented. At the very pinnacle, the ultimate source, is Mahavatar Babaji. He's described as the hidden source, the deathless avatar still residing, it said, in the Himalayas.
The fountainhead.
He's the fountainhead of the modern Kriya revival, the guru of Lahiri Mahasaya, and the sources mention his profound communion with Jesus Christ.
Right, you mentioned that.
And that together, they actually planned this specific technique for the current age, seeing it as a way to harmonize Krishna's original yoga with Christ's original path. And he's believed to continue guiding the lineage's mission from the subtle realms.
Is there anything else about Babaji? He seems so mysterious.
Well, there's that fascinating quote attributed to Lahiri Mahasaya about him, which really underscores his significance. Lahiri apparently said, "Whenever anyone utters with reverence the name of Babaji, that devotee attracts an instant spiritual blessing."
Wow. Just saying his name brings a blessing.
That's the belief. It positions him as this powerful, ever-present, benevolent force within the tradition, accessible through devotion.
Okay. So after Babaji comes Lahiri Mahasaya himself.
Yes. Shamacharan Lahiri, 1828 to 1895. He's revered with the title Yogavatar, which means the incarnation of yoga.
Yogavatar, okay. And his role?
His role was absolutely pivotal. He was the ideal householder yogi. He demonstrated through his own life, living normally in Benares, that the highest states of God realization of samadhi are fully achievable while living fully engaged in the world with family and work responsibilities.
So he proved it could be done. Liberation wasn't just for ascetics in caves.
Exactly. He was the living proof. And although he didn't set up a formal organization himself...
No SRF or anything like that.
No, he just initiated people who came to him. But he did make a quite remarkable prediction that's mentioned in the sources.
What did he predict?
He apparently predicted that about 50 years after his passing, because there would be a rising interest in yoga in the West, an account of his life would be written, and through that, the message of Kriya Yoga would spread globally.
50 years. And did that happen?
It did. Almost exactly 50 years later, that prophecy was fulfilled, really catalyzed by the publication of Paramahansa Yogananda's book.
Autobiography of a Yogi.
Exactly. Published in 1946, which became the vehicle that took Lahiri Mahasai's life story and the Kriya message around the world.
Amazing foresight. Okay, so who comes next in this man line?
Following Lahiri Mahasaya is one of his foremost disciples, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, 1855-1936.
Sri Yukteswar. And his title?
He's known as the Janavatar, the incarnation of wisdom.
The avatar, incarnation of wisdom, fitting. What was his specific mission?
His mission seems to have been more intellectual and preparatory. He was specifically commissioned by Babaji himself to write a book.
Which book is that?
The book called The Holy Science, Kaivalya Darsanam. Its purpose was to demonstrate the underlying unity between the highest truths of the Hindu scriptures, particularly Sankhya philosophy, and the Christian Bible.
Bridging East and West intellectually.
Precisely. It served as a crucial intellectual foundation, preparing the ground for the universal message that Yogananda would later carry.
So Babaji tasked him with that. Any other commissions?
Yes. Babaji also gave Sri Yukteswar another vital task, to train the specific disciple who was destined to take the Kriya Yoga science to the Western world.
And that disciple was?
That disciple, of course, was Paramahansa Yogananda.
So Sri Yukteswar's job was partly to prepare Yogananda for his world mission.
Yes. And Sri Yukteswar is known in the sources, particularly in Yogananda's descriptions, for his incredibly demanding, disciplined, and very straightforward, sometimes stern, training methods.
Tough love.
You could say that. Designed to forge strong, resilient disciples, capable of facing the challenges of a huge global mission. He didn't cuddle them.
Okay. Which brings us then to Paramahansa Yogananda, 1893-1952, the emissary to the West.
Exactly. He was, according to the lineage, specifically chosen for this role, apparently blessed by Lahiri Mahasaya himself when Yogananda was just an infant.
Really?
Yes, there's a story about Lahiri Mahasaya holding the infant Yogananda and making a prophecy about his future world mission. And then, of course, he received his intense, rigorous training directly from Sri Yukteswar.
So he was groomed for this.
He was the master selected for the world stage, sent to America in 1920 with the direct blessing and urging of Mahavatar Babaji.
And he founded the organizations to carry this forward.
Yes. To create a vehicle for this worldwide mission, he founded Yogoda Satsanga Society of India, YSS, back in India in 1917, and then Self-Realization Fellowship, SRF, in the United States in 1920, shortly after arriving.
And his book, The Autobiography, was the catalyst.
Absolutely. As we touched on, Autobiography of a Yogi became this global phenomenon. It directly introduced millions of people worldwide to these masters, Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Yukteswar, and to the Kriya Yoga science itself. It really sparked the modern mainstream surge of interest in yoga and meditation across the globe.
It's still incredibly popular today.
It is. Now, there's an important point noted in the sources regarding the SRF-YSS lineage specifically.
What's that?
Before Yogananda passed away in 1952, he stated that he would be the last in the formal line of SRF-YSS gurus.
The last guru in that line.
Yes. He declared that after his passing, the Kriya Yoga teachings themselves, as disseminated through the Self-Realization Fellowship and Yogoda Satsanga Society of India organizations he founded, would serve as the living guru for disciples initiated into that path. The teachings and the organization become the guru.
Interesting. So the lineage continues through the teachings themselves in that case.
That's the model for SRFYSS, yes. Now, it's also really important to recognize that because Lahiri Mahasaya, the Yogavatar, initiated numerous disciples during his lifetime.
Right, not just Sri Yukteswar.
Exactly. And not all of them became formal monks or stayed associated with, a single structure that continued after them. As a result, several authentic Kriya lineages naturally branched out from him over time.
Okay, so there are other valid Kriya lines.
Yes. The sources mention several notable disciples who carried on the tradition in different ways. For example, Lahiri's own sons, Dinkori and Dukori Lahiri, were initiated and taught. There was Swami Kavalananda, Swami Pranabananda Giri, known for attaining Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and Panchanan Bhattacharya, another householder disciple, who founded an organization called the Arya Mission Institution in Calcutta, which spread Kriya widely in Bengal.
So several branches right from Lahiri Mahasaya.
Yes. And then from Sri Yukteswar's disciples, others also carried the torch. Besides Yogananda, there was Swami Satyananda Giri and also Paramahansa Hariharananda, who later founded the Kriya Yoga Institute.
Hariharananda, okay. I've heard that name.
So these different branching lineages help explain why you might encounter some minor variations today in, say, the specific preparatory techniques taught, or maybe the details of the initiation ceremony, or the organizational approach used.
But they all trace back.
All authentic Kriya traditions, despite these variations, trace their spiritual authority and the transmission of the core Kriya technique back to Lahiri Mahasaya as the fountainhead of the modern revival.
Like different rivers flowing from the same mountain spring.
That's a perfect analogy. They are different valid expressions serving different needs, but originating from the same source.
Okay, that clarifies the lineage aspect really well. So we've laid out what Kriya Yoga is. We've traced its remarkable history and lineage. Now let's dig deeper into the why and the how, the underlying philosophy and the ultimate purpose driving this whole practice.
Right. The sources present Kriya Yoga as operating on what seems like a highly scientific model of spiritual liberation. It's not just based on faith alone.
The scientific model, how so?
Well, it begins with the premise that human suffering and that feeling of being separate from the divine aren't just, arbitrary punishments or bad luck.
Okay.
They're seen as the result of identifiable psychophysiological processes tied directly to the flow of our life force, the prana, and the activity, the turbulence of our mind.
So suffering has a cause we can identify and work with.
That's the idea. And therefore, freedom or liberation isn't achieved just through believing something strongly. It's achieved by systematically reversing these limiting processes through specific, targeted actions, the Kriya technique.
Reversing the process.
Yes. The system deeply integrates the physical body, the subtle energy system, the chakras, nadis, the concept of karma, and the state of consciousness into this unified, workable theory. It connects all the dots.
Okay. So what's the ultimate goal then? What's the highest aim?
At its highest level, the ultimate goal of Kriya Yoga is exactly the same as the root meaning of the word yoga itself. Conscious, direct, experiential union with the omnipresent cosmic spirit, or God, however you conceive of that.
Union. Yoga means union.
Exactly. This state is often called self-realization or God realization, and the sources define it as bringing about liberation. The Sanskrit word is moksha, liberation from what they call the threefold sufferings that afflict all humanity.
Threefold sufferings, what are they?
They're categorized as physical disease or disharmony,
Okay.
mental inharmony like anxiety, fear, restlessness, and spiritual ignorance, which is seen as the root cause, the illusion of being just this limited, separate self, cut off from the infinite.
So liberation from body, mind, and spiritual ignorance issues.
That's the scope. And crucially, it's not about just achieving an intellectual understanding about God or spirit. It's about direct, transcendental perception and actual communion with the divine.
Experience over belief.
Yes. As Paramahansa Yogananda put it so simply, really capturing the essence of why we seek anything, uniting the soul with spirit is yoga reunion with that great happiness everyone is seeking.
Reunion with happiness, that's powerful.
The practice is presented as the direct means to access that inherent joy and peace that is our true nature, but which gets covered up.
Okay. And the key mechanism for achieving this union you mentioned involves prana, the life force.
Yes, absolutely. The key mechanism lies in what the masters call the science of prana and pranayama.
The science of breath and energy.
Precisely. The fundamental teaching here is that in our ordinary state of consciousness, our life force, our prana, flows primarily outward. It flows out through the senses, sight, sound, touch, etc. And this outward flow binds our attention and our energy to the material world, to external objects and experiences.
Okay, energy flowing out keeps us focused outside.
And this externalized flow is what fuels our restless thoughts, our endless desires, our emotional turbulence. It keeps the mind constantly agitated and looking for satisfaction outside.
A hamster wheel.
Kinda, yeah. Now, Kriya Yoga is specifically called the highest science of pranayama because it offers a direct, potent method to actually reverse this habitual externalizing current of energy.
Reverse the flow. From outward to inward.
Exactly. The technique teaches the practitioner how to consciously interiorize both the mind and the life force, drawing them back from the sensory nerves, away from the external world, and directing them back into the subtle energy centers located along the spine.
Drawing energy back to the spine.
Yes. And by scientifically controlling and calming the breath, remember that principle from the Gita about neutralizing the breath.
Right, prana and apana.
By doing that through the Kriya technique, the sources explain that you automatically, almost effortlessly, calm the physical heart rate and the turbulent waves of thought in the mind.
Calming the breath calms the mind.
Directly. It creates the necessary inner stillness, this state of profound quietude that allows our consciousness to be withdrawn from all those external distractions and become receptive to perceiving the divine within. Calming the life force is the secret to stilling the mind.
Okay, that direct link between prana control and mind control seems absolutely central to Kriya's claim of efficiency.
It is. It's the core of its efficacy and why it's considered such a direct or airplane path. And this leads us straight into another major promise of Kriya Yoga, the neutralization of karma.
Ah, karma. Burning karma. How does Kriya claim to do that?
Well, the underlying philosophy teaches that our karmic patterns, which are essentially the results of our past actions, thoughts, desires, and their energetic imprints, called samskaras.
Samskaras, okay. Habit patterns.
Exactly, deep-seated tendencies. These are believed to be stored as energy blueprints, primarily within the chakras located in our subtle spinal body.
So karma is stored energetically in the spine.
That's the yogic model presented. And these samskaras are like dormant seeds just waiting for the right conditions to germinate. When they do, they shape our future experiences, our habits, our attractions and repulsions, our limitations.
The seeds of our destiny, in a way.
You could say that. Now, Kriya Yoga is presented as the most effective, most scientific method available to systematically deal with this accumulated karmic debt, this storehouse of seeds.
How does it deal with them?
The powerful revolving current of life energy, the prana, that's generated during the Kriya practice is described as being like a spiritual fire. Remember the inner fire, right? That concept of tapas?
Yes, the inner fire.
This internal energy current systematically burns up, or roasts is the analogy sometimes used, these karmic seeds stored in the spine before they even have a chance to fully manifest as actions or experiences in your outer life.
Roasting the seeds before they sprout.
Exactly. It neutralizes the potential energy of past karma at its source. Each Kriya practice is said to purify the chakras, helping to gradually erase the deep-seated grooves of past habits and limiting patterns from the subtle nervous system, and even from the physical brain.
Wow. So it's like cleaning the hard drive of the subconscious.
That's a very modern way to put it, but yes, that's the essence. Yogananda's quote on this is particularly potent. The liberating power of Kriya Yoga sunders the prison bars of karma.
Sunders the prison bars. That really paints a picture of freedom.
It does. It underscores this idea of accelerated freedom. It suggests you don't have to passively wait for all your karma to slowly play out over countless lifetimes.
You can take action.
You can take direct scientific action to rapidly incinerate the energetic causes of future limitations right now. This allows the practitioner, it's claimed, to evolve spiritually at an unprecedented speed, freeing themselves from the restrictive chain of cause and effect much, much more quickly.
That's a huge part of the appeal, I imagine. The speed, the efficiency in dealing with karma.
Absolutely. And this process of neutralizing karma is intimately connected with another key aspect: the purification of the subtle body.
The subtle body. You mean the chakras and nadis?
Yes. The ancient seers, the rishis, perceived the spine and the brain not just as physical organs, but as the spiritual tree of life. It's the axis mundi of our being.
The tree of life.
And the energies, the prana, that enliven our physical body and consciousness flow downward and outward from these subtle cerebrospinal centers, the chakras.
So the energy flows down from the spine into the body.
Typically, yes. Therefore, the health, the purity, and the optimal functioning of the subtle nervous system, the chakras and the energy channels, the nadis are considered absolutely paramount for clear spiritual perception. If the channels are blocked or impure, the energy can't flow properly.
Makes sense. You need clear wiring for the current to flow.
Precisely. Kriya practice is said to directly purify these energy channels, the nadis and the energy centers, the chakras. It removes subtle blockages and allows for a smooth, unimpeded upward flow of consciousness and the dormant spiritual energy known as Kundalini.
Kundalini. We'll definitely need to talk more about that. So Kriya clears the path for Kundalini.
That's a key function. And this inner purification isn't just some vague symbolic idea. The sources consistently bring it back to that psychophysiological connection we discussed.
How so?
The practice decarbonizes the blood, recharges it with oxygen, and then transmutes that oxygen into a potent life current. This process is said to physically revitalize the brain and the entire nervous system.
And so it benefits the physical brain too.
Yes, promoting physical health, vitality, and as mentioned, even slowing down cellular decay. It's presented as this seamless interaction between the spiritual practice and tangible physical and energetic effects. The subtle and the gross are interconnected.
Okay, this is incredibly detailed and potent. So with all this potential, this philosophical grounding, how does someone actually learn and practice Kriya Yoga? Where do you start?
Right. This is where the sources become exceptionally clear and incredibly consistent, emphasizing one fundamental, non-negotiable principle.
Which is?
The core Kriya technique cannot be learned effectively or safely from books, from online articles, or from videos, period.
Cannot. That's pretty definitive. Why is such a strong stance? Is it just about secrecy?
It's presented not as arbitrary secrecy for the sake of exclusivity, but as a foundational principle upheld across all authentic Kriya lineages, and it's rooted deep in ancient yogic tradition. It's considered an essential safeguard.
A safeguard for what? Or whom?
For both the student and for the integrity and potency of the science itself. The teaching is adamant. The technique must be received through formal, direct, in-person initiation from an authorized representative, a qualified Kriyacharya, Kriya teacher, or guru connected to a genuine lineage.
In-person initiation, not just reading instructions.
Definitely not. They emphasize repeatedly that this initiation is far more than just receiving a set of instructions or information. It's described as a sacred ceremony.
A ceremony. What happened?
It's said to involve a subtle vibrational transmission of the guru's spiritual grace and energy, that term Shaktipat, again, directly into the disciple.
A transmission of energy.
Yes, and this transmission is considered absolutely vital. It's believed to actually empower the technique itself, making it effective in a way that merely copying instructions from a book simply cannot replicate.
So the technique needs to be activated in a sense.
That's a good way to think about it. Activated or empowered by the guru's grace. Furthermore, the initiation establishes this direct spiritual link, this connection between the student and the entire lineage of masters.
The Guru Parambara connection.
Exactly. And this link is considered essential for providing subtle inner guidance and also protection, which are needed for navigating the powerful energies that can be awakened by the practice safely and effectively.
So attempting it without initiation is?
Universally considered ineffective at best, or potentially even harmful or dangerous at worst, precisely because of the potent forces involved. You need the proper empowerment and the established guidance system.
Okay, point taken. Initiation is non-negotiable. So, assuming one has received proper initiation, what does the core practice actually involve? What are you doing?
The core practice itself, once you've received it through initiation, centers fundamentally on the spine. The spine is often referred to as the altar of God, or the highway to the infinite.
Highway to the infinite. I like that.
The Kriya yogi learns a very specific technique to mentally direct the life energy, the prana, to revolve in a specific potent circuit. This circuit involves moving the energy up and down around the 6 main subtle energy centers, the chakras, which are located along the cerebrospinal axis, basically, the spinal cord and brainstem.
Revolving energy up and down the spine through the chakras.
Yes. And these 6 spinal centers are said to correspond not only to major physical nerve plexuses in the body, but also, on a more subtle astrological level, they're linked to the 12 astral signs of the zodiac, collectively representing the cosmic man within us.
Wow, layers upon layers. So this revolving energy, what does it do?
This continuous conscious revolution of energy within the spine and brain is said to intensely magnetize the entire cerebrospinal system.
Magnetize it?
Yes, like charging it up. This magnetization awakens latent spiritual potentials that lie dormant within us and powerfully draw their consciousness inward, away from the senses, and upward towards the higher centers in the brain.
Pulling the energy and awareness up.
Exactly. And a crucial aspect of how this works involves the breath, but again, not just normal breathing. It's used as a precise scientific tool.
How is the breath used?
The Kriya Pranayama is a highly refined method that's designed to profoundly influence the body's autonomic functions, things we normally don't control consciously, like heart rate and breathing. When practiced correctly, smoothly, and without any physical strain, it is said to naturally and significantly slow down the activity of the heart and the lungs.
Slowing the heart and lungs way down.
Yes. And this physiological calming has a direct, immediate effect. It induces a state of deep inner stillness in the mind. The mental chatter starts to subside.
Because the body is calm.
The body-mind connection is key. As the practitioner's physiological need for oxygen actually decreases through the mastery of this energy control technique.
Less oxygen needed. How?
Because the energy is being supplied more directly by prana rather than just through gross oxygen exchange, according to the theory. In this state, the breath can become extremely subtle, sometimes even temporarily pausing altogether in an effortless way. This is called the breathless state, or Kevala Kumbhaka.
Kevala Kumbhaka. Effortless breath suspension.
Yes, it's not forced breath holding. It's a natural consequence of deep inner stillness and energy control. And it's in this state of profound stillness and quietude when the mind is finally free from the constant agitation of thoughts and external sensations that our attention is freed.
Free for what?
Freed to be fully interiorized, allowing consciousness to directly perceive and experience the soul and its inherent connection to spirit. The stillness achieved through this scientific breath and energy control is the doorway, the prerequisite for higher awareness.
Wow, okay. So the technique sounds incredibly focused and powerful.
Yeah.
Is it just the one technique, or are there other parts to the system?
That's another really important point the sources make very clear. The Kriya technique itself, particularly as it's taught within the major lineages today, like SRF, YSS, or Ananda, is actually the culminating practice. It's the peak, but it sits within a much broader, integrated spiritual system.
So there's more to it than just the core Kriya Pranayama.
Absolutely. There is consistently a preliminary period required. A period of study and dedicated practice of other foundational techniques before one is generally considered eligible for Kriya initiation itself.
The preparation we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And this isn't just arbitrary hazing. It's a deliberate, purposeful process. It's often compared to undergoing rigorous training and, really importantly, acclimatization before attempting to climb a very high mountain like Everest. You wouldn't just show up at base camp and head for the summit.
Right. You need to prepare your body and mind for the altitude, the challenge.
Precisely. The structured path, especially the one developed and systematized by Paramahansa Yogananda for modern seekers, can actually be seen as mirroring the traditional 8 limbs of Patanjali's Raja Yoga.
The Ashtanga yoga path.
Yes, but repackaging those principles and practices for greater efficiency and accessibility for the modern person, often someone living a busy life.
How does it repackage them?
The preliminary techniques specifically fulfill the purpose of preparing the student in all the essential areas covered by Patanjali's limbs, building an ethical foundation, yamas and niyamas, ensuring physical readiness and nervous system health related to asana, learning to withdraw energy inward from the senses, pratyahara, developing strong, focused concentration, dharana, and living the art of deep meditation, dhyana, before they engage with the extremely powerful Kriya Pranayama itself, which takes you towards samadhi.
So it builds the necessary container, the inner strength and focus.
Perfectly put. It builds the container, and the sources detail the primary preparatory techniques taught, for example, within the SRFYSS lineage, as clear examples of this necessary foundation.
Okay, what are those main preparatory techniques?
There are 3 core ones that students practice for that initial period, maybe 8 to 12 months. First, there are the energization exercises.
Energization exercises. Are they like physical workouts?
Not really, no. They are a unique series of 39 specific exercises developed by Yogananda himself. Their main purpose is distinct from physical exercise. They are designed to teach the practitioner how to consciously draw pranic energy, cosmic energy, directly into the body.
Draw energy in. How?
Using a combination of breath, focused attention, and willpower directed to different body parts. The goal is to purify and strengthen the body and nervous system, eliminate physical and mental stress, and critically prepare the student to be able to sit still and comfortably for extended periods of deep meditation without restlessness or fatigue.
Okay, so energy control for physical and mental stillness. What's next?
The second is the Hong-Sau technique of concentration.
Hong-Sau, what does that mean?
It's described as an ancient yet very simple concentration technique. It uses the natural, gentle flow of the breath coupled with a subtle mental mantra, Hong-Sau, pronounced like Hong-Sau. This mantra is said to translate roughly as, I am he, or I am spirit.
I am spirit. Okay, and its purpose?
Its primary purpose is to help the practitioner withdraw their thought and energy away from external distractions, that's the yogic limb of pratyahara, and focus the mind intensely inward. It builds the essential capacity for one-pointed concentration, dharana, which is absolutely necessary for the deeper stages of meditation and for Kriya.
Building focus. Got it. And the third one?
The third is the affamam technique of meditation.
Iamum, or afam, the cosmic sound.
Exactly. This technique builds upon the concentration developed through Hong-Sau. It involves using that focused attention to consciously perceive the divine presence manifesting as the subtle cosmic vibration, the cosmic sound of Aum or Om, which is said to underlie all creation.
Hearing the avyam vibration internally.
Yes. This sound is identified in the teachings with the Holy Ghost, or Word, in the Christian tradition, and as Shabda Brahman, or Nada Brahma, in Hinduism, the primordial creative vibration.
So it connects across traditions again. What does practicing this yam technique do?
Practicing this technique helps the practitioner expand their awareness beyond the narrow limitations of the physical body and the restless, chattering mind. It enables them to directly perceive and begin to realize the soul's infinite potential, its connection to the vast ocean of spirit. This is meditation dhyana, progressing towards the possibility of samadhi.
Wow. Okay, so energization for the body and will, Hong-Sau for concentration, and Elayam for expanding awareness and perception of spirit.
That's the progression. So you can see it's a very carefully layered, systematic approach. It's about building the necessary inner capacity, the strength, the focus, and the subtle perception before introducing the potent, advanced Kriya technique itself. This ensures the student is properly prepared, grounded, and able to handle the powerful energies that Kriya awakens in a balanced and beneficial way.
It makes perfect sense. Acclimatization is key. You don't just jump to the summit.
Exactly. Preparation is paramount.
Okay, now, to provide a bit more context for listeners, how does Kriya Yoga fit within the broader landscape of spiritual practices? How does it compare or relate to other forms of yoga that people might be more familiar with?
That's a great question for context. The sources consistently identify Kriya Yoga specifically as a highly advanced and very direct form of Raja Yoga.
Raja Yoga.
Yeah.
That translates as royal yoga.
Yes, the royal yoga, considered by many to be the kingly or supreme path of yoga, focusing primarily on the mind.
And Raja Yoga, as systematized by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, what's its main goal again?
Its ultimate aim is famously stated in the second sutra, Chitta Vritti Nirodha.
Which means
The cessation or stopping of the vrittis, the modifications, the fluctuations, the turbulent waves of the citta, the mind stuff or consciousness, basically achieving a perfectly still mind.
okay, stilling the mind. How is Kriya the distilled essence of that?
Kriya is considered the distilled essence or the supreme scientific method of Raja Yoga because it provides what's seen as the most direct and efficient means to achieve that state of mental stillness.
More direct than other Raja Yoga techniques.
Potentially, yes, because instead of primarily attempting to control the thoughts directly, maybe through sheer willpower or intellectual analysis, or focusing on an external object, which can be very difficult.
Yeah, the mind rebels.
The Kriya Yogi, as we discussed, controls the underlying vital force, the prana, that actually animates those very thoughts.
Going for the root cause again.
Exactly. By scientifically calming and redirecting the prana through the specific Kriya technique, the mind is said to calm down naturally, profoundly, and relatively quickly. This makes Kriya an exceptionally efficient and direct path for achieving the ultimate goals of Raja Yoga control of the mind, leading to union with spirit.
Okay, so it's advanced Raja Yoga using prana control.
Yeah.
How does it relate then to Hatha Yoga, which is probably the most widely known form of yoga in the West today, with all the postures?
Good question. Hatha Yoga, in its classical sense, focuses primarily on preparing and purifying the physical body and balancing its energies.
Preparing the body for what?
Traditionally, preparing it for Raja Yoga, for deeper meditation. Hatha uses physical postures, the asanas, cleansing practices called shakriyas, and various basic breath control techniques, or pranayama, to achieve this. Its main goal is often described as balancing the two major energy channels that flank the spine, the Ida, lunar cooling, and Pingala, solar heating nadis.
Balancing the solar and lunar energies.
Yes. Now, Kriya Yoga is seen as complementary to this, but definitely operating at a more advanced and subtle level.
How so?
While Hatha Yoga works mainly on balancing those dualistic side channels, Ida and Pingala, Kriya Yoga works directly and much more powerfully within the central channel, the main energy conduit in the spine called the Sushumna Nadi.
Ah, the Sushumna, that's the main highway.
That's considered the primary pathway for the awakened spiritual energy, the Kundalini, to ascend towards the brain, towards enlightenment. So Kriya is working directly on that central pathway.
So Hatha prepares the side roads, Kriya works on the main highway.
That's a decent analogy. Traditionally, extensive Hatha Yoga practice was often considered a prerequisite for receiving initiation into more advanced yogic practices like Kriya. You needed a strong, pure, balanced vehicle.
But is that still the case today? Do you need to be an advanced Hatha yogi first?
Within systems like Paramahansa Yogananda's, it's presented slightly differently. The specialized energization exercises, which we discussed.
Right, the 39 exercise.
They are specifically designed to fulfill a similar preparatory function, purifying the body, strengthening the nervous system, developing energy control, but perhaps more efficiently for the modern context. Therefore, extensive asana practice, while still considered beneficial for health and flexibility, is generally seen as less essential as a strict prerequisite before Kriya initiation in these lineages compared to traditional paths. The energization exercises cover that ground.
Okay, that makes sense. Kriya provides its own Hatha yoga equivalent in a way. Now, what about the other main paths of yoga, like Bhakti yoga, devotion, Jnana yoga, wisdom, and Karma yoga, selfless action? Does Kriya replace those?
No, not at all. It's not presented as replacing them, but rather as integrating and powerfully accelerating progress on all of them simultaneously.
It boosts the other paths.
Yes, it acts like a unifying force, enhancing all aspects of the spiritual journey. Let's look at how. For Bhakti Yoga, the path of love and devotion, Kriya provides tangible, direct inner experiences during meditation experiences of deep peace, profound joy, maybe even seeing inner divine light.
Actual experiences, not just faith.
Right. This gives devotion a concrete experiential foundation. It transforms what might be abstract faith or emotional longing into actual conscious communion with the beloved, with the divine. It makes the object of devotion real inside.
That makes devotion much more powerful, I imagine.
Exactly. As Yogananda famously put it, combining the scientific with the devotional. Kriya Yoga plus devotion. It works like mathematics. It cannot fail. The two together are presented as an unbeatable combination.
Kriya plus devotion. Okay, what about Jnana Yoga?
For Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom and discriminative knowledge, the primary tool is discerning the real from the unreal. The biggest obstacle to that is the restless, biased mind.
Right, the mind clouds our judgment.
By effectively stilling the restless modifications of the mind through Kriya, it allows for direct intuitive perception, jnana, of truth to dawn from within. It helps you transcend purely intellectual understanding or philosophical speculation
To actual realization.
Exactly. Direct knowing of your true self and its unity with spirit. Kriya clears the mental fog so wisdom can shine through.
Okay, and Karma Yoga, the path of action.
For Karma Yoga, the path of selfless action performed without attachment to the results. The deep inner peace, the calmness, and the increasing sense of detachment from the ego and its desires, which are cultivated through regular Kriya practice.
The calmness it brings.
That inner state naturally enables the practitioner to act in the world with greater skill, effectiveness, and efficiency. Yoga karma sukoshalam, as the Gita says, yoga is skill in action. But crucially, without being bound by attachment to the fruits of those actions.
Acting effectively, but without stress or worry about the outcome.
Precisely. You can perform your duties with focus and energy, but maintain inner freedom. This embodies the very essence of Karma Yoga selfless service performed as an offering. Kriya helps cultivate the inner state required for true Karma Yoga.
So it really does seem to support and enhance all the major paths.
It does. The sources offer a useful framework for understanding this integration. You can think of the 4 major yoga paths as engaging different primary aspects of the human being.
Okay, how?
Bhakti Yoga primarily engages the emotions, the heart. Jnana Yoga engages the intellect, the discriminating mind. Karma Yoga engages the will, the capacity for action. And Raja Kriya Yoga directly engages the underlying energy system, the prana.
Heart, head, hands, and energy.
That's a good way to summarize it. And since energy, prana, is the fundamental force animating all these other faculties, emotions, thoughts, actions.
Right, energy underlies everything.
By refining and controlling the energy system at its very source through Kriya, you naturally elevate and accelerate progress on all 4 paths simultaneously. It acts as this unifying, empowering science that lifts the entire being.
That's a really compelling way to look at it. Kriya as the energy master key.
That seems to be the perspective offered.
Now, to really bring this alive, the sources are full of quotes from the masters themselves. Hearing their words seems crucial to grasping the essence of Kriya.
Absolutely. There's nothing quite like hearing the teachings directly from the lineage masters. Their words, preserved so carefully in the sources, convey the heart, the purpose, and the incredible promise of Kriya Yoga in a way that simple explanation sometimes can't.
They give you the feeling, the inspiration.
Exactly. They provide the why, the how, the what, and definitely the wow of this path.
Okay, let's start with Paramahansa Yogananda. He was the one who brought it to the West. His words are probably the most familiar to many. What are some key themes or quotes from him?
Yogananda speaks with this amazing blend of scientific clarity, deep, unwavering devotion, and these incredibly inspiring promises of tangible, achievable results. He makes it sound both logical and deeply mystical.
Okay, like on the efficacy, the speed.
We've already mentioned some of his most powerful statements there. Kriya Yoga plus devotion. It works like mathematics. It cannot fail. That blend of science and heart.
Right.
And of course, his vivid description of Kriya as the airplane route to God, emphasizing its efficiency compared to slower paths.
The airplane route. Unforgettable. What about the personal benefit, the joy?
He shared his own profound experience, saying something like, "I have never known any pleasure of the world as great as the spiritual joy of Kriya Yoga."
Wow. Greater than any worldly pleasure. That speaks volumes.
It really does. It points to the depth of the internal rewards possible.
And on the purpose, the goal of Kriya.
He emphasized its power to liberate us from limitations. The liberating power of Kriya Yoga sunders the prison bars of karma. We talked about that powerful image.
Breaking free from karma.
And he also conveyed this sense of intimate, immediate divine connection accessible through the practice. My beloved Lord is never more than a Kriya away. Like the divine is right here, reachable through this technique.
So close. just a Kriya away.
And his concise definition really captures its unique nature. Kriya Yoga is no ordinary breathing exercise. It is the highest known technique of pranayama by which you can attain cosmic consciousness. He sets the bar very high.
Highest technique for cosmic consciousness.
Okay.
Powerful words. Now, what about his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, the Janavatar, the incarnation of wisdom? What was his emphasis?
Yukteswar's words often emphasized discipline, clarity of understanding, and the need for steady, consistent effort. He was known for being very direct, very practical.
Like what? Any specific quotes?
His counsel to disciples often cut right to the chase. He'd say things like, "Nothing matters except your steady, daily spiritual advancement. For that, use Kriya Yoga."
Just focus on your practice, basically.
Pretty much. Keep your eye on the goal. Use the tool you've been given. He also highlighted Kriya's crucial role in overcoming the world's illusions and challenges.
Oh, so?
He taught that disciples need Kriya to penetrate the darkness of Maya, the cosmic illusion that makes us identify with the body and ego, and also to develop the deep inner calmness needed to endure the unavoidable dualities of life. You know, pain and pleasure, success and failure, heat and cold with equanimity without being thrown off balance. Kriya builds that inner resilience.
Facing life's ups and downs calmly, that's a practical benefit.
Very practical. And remember his mission from Babaji to show the unity in all religions.
Like writing the holy science.
He achieved that partly by demonstrating, through reason and scripture, how Kriya is the underlying scientific method that allows one to rise above superficial sectarian differences and directly experience the universal truth common to all paths. Kriya is the key to transcending dogma.
Finding the shared core. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to the source of the modern revival, Lahiri Mahasaya, the Yogavatar, the householder yogi. What was his style?
Lahiri Mahasaya's teachings, as recorded by his disciples, sound incredibly practical, often focused on solving life's problems through direct inner experience and constantly encouraging sincere effort. He was talking to people living everyday lives.
Like his advice on solving problems.
Yes, that profound piece of advice. Solve all your problems through meditation. Exchange unprofitable speculation for actual God communion.
Stop worrying and analyzing endlessly. Just go within and connect.
Exactly. He taught that the answers and solutions are found through inner connection, not just outer struggle or mental gymnastics.
What about liberation?
On the liberating potential of Kriya, he gave this powerful urging. Cease being a prisoner of the body. Using the secret key of Kriya, learn to escape into spirit.
Kriya as the secret key to escape the body prison.
That's the image.
Yeah.
And he also offered tremendous reassurance to his disciples, promising his continued subtle guidance even after he left the physical body. He said things like, "I am ever with those who practice Kriya. I will guide you through your ever-enlarging spiritual perceptions."
So the guru's presence remains through the practice.
Yes, emphasizing that living guru connection, the power of the lineage bond, continuing beyond physical presence.
Did he have a motto?
He did. A famous, very encouraging motto that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of perseverance needed on any spiritual path, but especially with Kriya. Banat, banat, banjai.
Banat Banjai. What does it mean?
It translates roughly as making, someday made, or sometimes doing, someday done.
Keep trying and eventually you'll succeed.
Exactly. It's this wonderful reminder that consistent, persistent, sincere effort, even if progress seems slow sometimes, invariably leads to success in spiritual practice. Just keep doing it.
I love that. Very practical and encouraging. Finally, let's touch on Mahavatar Babaji again, the fountainhead. Do we have quotes attributed directly to him?
We do, primarily from the accounts of his meetings with Lahiri Mahasaya and later with Sri Yukteswar, as recorded by Yogananda. His words convey the grand vision, the divine scope, and the core mission of the Kriya revival.
Like the quote about the origins.
Yes, that foundational statement he made to Lahiri Mahasaya during the initiation. The Kriya Yoga that I am giving to the world is a revival of the same science that Krishna gave millenniums ago to Arjuna and was later known to Patanjali and Christ, establishing its ancient and universal roots.
Setting the stage, what about the global purpose?
He apparently expressed this expansive vision for Kriya's future impact on the world. He predicted that Kriya Yoga would eventually spread in all lands and aid in harmonizing the nations through man's personal transcendental perception of the Infinite Father.
Wow. Harmonizing nations through individual spiritual experience.
That's the vision. It suggests that widespread inner transformation facilitated by Kriya is the key to outer peace and unity. It's not just about individual salvation, it's about uplifting humanity.
That's a profound goal.
And finally, his revolutionary command about accessibility, given in response to Lahiri Mahasai's concerns about the strict ancient rules. Be it so, give Kriya freely to all who humbly ask for help.
Opening the doors.
Yes, that statement signifies his clear intention to remove the ancient safeguards, the secrecy, and make this powerful path universally accessible to all sincere souls in this modern age, regardless of their background.
Truly remarkable words from all the masters. They really paint a picture of the depth and breadth of this path.
They absolutely do.
Okay, so moving on from the philosophy, the techniques, the lineage, and those inspiring words. Let's talk about the tangible results again. What are the specific benefits, the rewards, and the profound spiritual impact one can realistically expect from dedicated long-term practice of Kriya Yoga?
Right, the payoff, so to speak. The sources describe the benefits as unfolding progressively. It's a gradual transformation that works on the practitioner on every level of their being, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
A holistic transformation.
Yes. The ultimate aim is the dismantling of the illusion of being just this limited, separate self and the realization of our true, infinite nature. The effects are said to start on the gross physical level, then move into the more subtle mental and energetic levels, and finally impact the causal level, the level of karma and deep consciousness.
Starting gross, moving subtle.
Okay.
What are the initial, more tangible fruits?
On the more immediate and often first notice level, there are significant physiological and psychological benefits reported.
Physical benefits first.
Physiologically, as we've touched upon, the technique is said to directly impact the body's chemistry and energy flow in positive ways. It helps purify the bloodstream, removing excess CO2, increasing oxygen uptake. This, in turn, is said to rejuvenate the brain, the spine, the entire nervous system.
Leading to better health.
Yes, promoting overall health, vitality, enhanced healing potential, and even, as mentioned, slowing the rate of tissue decay associated with aging. It's also said to help cleanse the internal organs by balancing the flow of prana throughout the body's systems.
Okay, tangible physical improvements. What about the psychological side?
Psychologically, one of the most widely reported and often most welcome immediate benefits is a profound, palpable sense of inner peace and calmness.
Less stress, less anxiety.
Exactly. The practice is said to directly calm the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, effectively reducing stress, anxiety, worry, and general mental turbulence. It brings a sense of inner quiet.
That alone would be worth it for many people.
Absolutely. Beyond just calmness, it also significantly enhances concentration and focus, brings greater mental clarity and sharpness, strengthens willpower and self-control, and leads to improved objectivity and intuitive insight.
So it helps you think clearer and solve problems better.
Yes, making it easier to navigate and respond to life's daily challenges with more wisdom and less reactivity.
Okay, those are already significant benefits. Now moving to the deeper, more explicitly spiritual impact. You mentioned Kundalini earlier. How does Kriya relate to Kundalini awakening?
Yes, Kriya Yoga is openly identified in the sources as a potent and scientific form of Kundalini Yoga.
Kundalini Yoga. Can you briefly explain Kundalini again?
Sure. Kundalini Shakti is the traditional yogic term for the powerful, dormant spiritual energy or evolutionary force that's said to reside, often pictured as coiled like a serpent, at the base of the spine in every human being.
The coiled serpent power.
Right. In our ordinary state of consciousness, this energy flows predominantly outward and downward, connecting us to the physical senses and binding our awareness primarily to the material world and egoic concerns.
Keeping us focused externally.
The specific purpose of the Kriya technique is to systematically and safely reverse this habitual outward and downward flow of energy.
How does Kriya reverse it?
The core practice of consciously revolving the life current, the prana, up and down along the central spinal channel, the Sushumna Nadi. This action is said to purify and awaken the chakras along that channel.
Clearing the pathway.
Exactly. It creates a clear, highly magnetized pathway within the sushumna for the Kundalini energy, when it awakens, to safely and gradually ascend upwards toward the higher spiritual centers in the brain, particularly the third eye, Ajna chakra, and the crown chakra, Sahasrara.
Is this awakening safe? You hear stories about Kundalini experiences being overwhelming.
That's a valid concern, and the sources address it. They emphasize that when Kriya is practiced correctly, consistently, and crucially under the guidance of a true qualified guru or authorized teacher from an authentic lineage, the awakening of Kundalini is typically a controlled, gradual, and harmonious process.
Gradual and controlled, not sudden and jarring.
That's the ideal, yes. It doesn't have to be dramatic or frightening. It works progressively to transmute the lower ego-bound levels of consciousness into higher, more refined, expansive states of awareness.
How does the practitioner experience this awakening?
It's often experienced subjectively as tangible surges of inner bliss, profound peace, inexplicable joy, feelings of universal love, and moments of greatly expanded awareness or insight. These inner experiences serve as powerful confirmation and motivation to continue on the path. They are signposts of progress.
Tangible inner rewards.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the ultimate spiritual impact? Where does this Kundalini ascent lead?
The ultimate spiritual impact, the absolute pinnacle state described in the yogic scriptures and the Kriya teachings, is the attainment of samadhi.
Samadhi, union with the divine.
Yes, that state of blissful, superconscious union with spirit, where the individual soul merges back into the ocean of consciousness. The sources generally distinguish between two primary stages or types of this profound realization.
Two stages of samadhi, what are they?
The first is called savikalpa samadhi.
Savikalpa, what does that mean?
Sa means with, and vikalpa means difference, thought, or form. So it's samadhi with difference or with form. This is described as an initial, often ecstatic state of union.
What happens in savikalpa samadhi?
In this state, the practitioner's consciousness merges deeply with spirit. The life force is completely withdrawn from the physical body, causing the body to become motionless, sometimes appearing breathless, or even lifeless from the outside.
Wow. Body becomes still.
But internally, the yogi is fully, vividly aware, absorbed in intense bliss, divine light, and profound perception of spirit. However, the term savikalpa indicates that a subtle distinction, a subtle sense of separation between the perceiver, the individual soul or ego, and the perceived spirit still remains.
So there's still a slight sense of experiencing that.
Exactly. A last vestige of the ego persists. Because of this subtle separation, it's possible for the practitioner to eventually return from this state back to ordinary ego consciousness. It's profoundly blissful, but not yet final liberation.
Okay, so savikalpa is blissful union, but temporary or conditional. What's the next stage?
The highest state described is nirvikalpa samadhi.
Nirvikalpa. Nir means without.
Yes, without difference, without form, without thought. In this ultimate state, the last vestiges of the individual ego, the final sense of separation, are completely dissolved.
Total dissolution of the ego.
Total dissolution into the infinite. The soul realizes its absolute, eternal, non-dual oneness with spirit, the ultimate reality. There is no longer a perceiver and a perceived, only boundless being consciousness bliss.
Oneness.
Yeah.
And this state is permanent.
The yogi who attains nirvikalpa samadhi is said to be permanently liberated, achieving final moksha or freedom. And incredibly, they can often maintain this state of unbroken God communion, this awareness of oneness, even while consciously performing actions and duties in the external world.
So they can function normally but remain in that state.
Yes, truly being in the world but not of it. Their actions flow spontaneously from that state of unity, free from egoic motivation.
That sounds like the ultimate goal.
It is presented as the culmination of the yogic path. And the sources mention that Paramahansa Yogananda's deeply moving poem, simply titled Samadhi, which is in his autobiography, provides a profound, almost first-hand experiential description of this all-encompassing state of cosmic consciousness. Reading it gives you a feel for it.
I'll have to revisit that poem. So, samadhi is the ultimate reward.
The ultimate reward, the ultimate homecoming.
Okay, now, given the powerful claims, the esoteric nature of some of this, the talk of Kundalini,
Yeah.
it's probably natural that Kriya Yoga is subject to quite a few misconceptions or misunderstandings.
Oh, absolutely. It's powerful, it's subtle, and therefore easily misunderstood. The sources definitely take care to address these common myths directly.
Why is it important to clear these up?
Because clarity ensures that people approach the path with the proper understanding, with reverence, realistic expectations, and crucially, in a way that is safe and effective. As we've stressed, that insistence on proper initiation and having a connection to a genuine guru or lineage is presented as the primary safeguard against misunderstanding the practice or approaching it in a potentially harmful way. Getting it wrong can have consequences.
Okay, so let's tackle some of the main myths mentioned. What's a common one?
One very common one, particularly maybe in the West, is the idea that Kriya Yoga is strictly a sectarian Hindu practice, something only for people born into or converting to the Hindu religion.
Is it?
The clarification offered is a strong no. It is consistently presented as a universal science, like the laws of physics or mathematics. Its principles and effects are inherent and operate regardless of one's personal religious background or beliefs.
So you don't have to become a Hindu.
Not at all. Remember, Lahiri Mahasaya himself consciously initiated people of all faiths, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, atheists even, and he specifically encouraged them to remain true to their own traditions, simply using Kriya as a practical tool for deeper communion and understanding within that framework.
Use Kriya to be a better Christian or a better Muslim, etc.
Exactly. Yogananda actively taught it as the underlying scientific essence behind the original pure paths of both Krishna, original yoga, and Christ, original Christianity, presenting it as a unifying science for all humanity, a path back to direct experience open to any sincere seeker of truth, whatever their label.
Okay, so definitely not sectarian. What's another common myth?
Another one is that Kriya Yoga is just a breathing exercise, maybe like some basic pranayama you might learn in a general yoga class, or perhaps just another form of physical asana-based yoga.
Just breathwork or postures?
The sources firmly clarify that while specific, highly refined breath techniques are central, Kriya is vastly more complex and works on much deeper energetic and conscious levels than simple physical breathing or asana practice.
So it's not just about holding your breath forcefully.
Absolutely not. They strongly caution against unscientific, forceful, or improperly learned attempts at breath retention, which can be harmful. Kriya is presented as a comprehensive psychophysiological science working systematically with life force and consciousness to achieve specific, predictable spiritual results.
And the focus isn't physical fitness.
While a healthy body is certainly beneficial and often a result of the practice, the primary focus of Kriya is squarely on inner energy control, mind control, and ultimately self-realization, not primarily on physical fitness or flexibility. This distinguishes its core aim from the popular focus of many modern asana-centric yoga classes.
Okay, so much more than just breathing or postures. What about learning it?
Yes. This is perhaps the most critical misconception and the one the sources really hammer home repeatedly. It's the widespread and dangerous belief that Kriya Yoga can be properly learned simply from reading a book, maybe finding instructions online, or watching a YouTube video.
The DIY approach. Is that possible?
According to every authentic lineage, the answer is an emphatic and unanimous no. The technique must be learned through direct, personal, in-person initiation from a qualified guru or an authorized Kriyacharya connected to a valid lineage. There are no shortcuts here.
And why is that stressed so much? We touched on it, but reiterate.
It's not about guarding a secret just to be exclusive. It's fundamentally about safety, efficacy, and honoring the subtle, powerful mechanics involved. Remember, the initiation is described as that crucial process involving the subtle energetic transmission, the Shaktipat, from guru to disciple.
The energy transfer.
That transmission is said to be what actually empowers the technique, making it work effectively. And it also forges that vital spiritual link to the lineage masters for ongoing inner guidings and protection. Attempting to practice the potent Kriya technique without this formal initiation and energetic empowerment is considered ineffective at best.
And potentially dangerous at worst.
Exactly, because you're dealing with powerful internal energies, Kundalini energy, and messing with them without proper guidance, understanding, and the guru's protective grace is considered unwise and potentially destabilizing physically or mentally.
Okay, message received loud and clear on that one. Initiation is key.
Yeah.
Now, what about the idea that the path itself might be dangerous or that it could somehow magnify your existing problems or psychological issues? Is there truth to that?
That's a nuanced point, and the clarification offered is also nuanced. The core message is, when practiced correctly, sincerely, and consistently under the guidance of a true guru or an authorized representative, Kriya Yoga is not considered inherently dangerous. It's a science designed for liberation.
So where does the potential danger come from?
Potential problems or harm are said to arise primarily from misuse, from incorrect practice, which often stems from trying to learn it improperly without initiation, or from a lack of adequate preparation and grounding before starting.
Trying to run before he can walk.
Exactly. The sources also acknowledge quite responsibly that individuals with severe pre-existing or underlying mental health conditions might find the intense inner focus and energy movements potentially destabilizing. In such cases, honest disclosure and discussion with the initiating lineage or teacher beforehand is considered absolutely essential. They might recommend delaying initiation or suggest alternative practices.
Okay, that's responsible. What about the idea that it magnifies problems? Does Kriya make your life harder?
That's often understood in a specific way. It's not that Kriya creates new problems out of thin air. Rather, it's seen as an acceleration of the process of working through and burning up your existing latent karma, your subconscious baggage.
So it brings stuff up faster.
Yes. Because the practice engages deep-seated energies and subconscious tendencies, it naturally brings these latent karmic patterns, unresolved issues, or hidden psychological knots more quickly to the surface of your conscious awareness.
So you have to face them.
Exactly. So they can be consciously faced, understood, worked through, and ultimately resolved and released. Kriya speeds up the process of encountering the lessons you need to learn anyway for your soul's evolution.
So this doesn't create the problems, it just makes you deal with them sooner rather than later.
That's the perspective. And crucially, the sources maintain that the guru's grace, the connection to the lineage, and the spiritual power and clarity generated by the Kriya practice itself provide the necessary inner strength, resilience, clarity, and wisdom needed to face these tests constructively. These challenges are seen as necessary purification steps on every soul's journey towards freedom. Kriya just potentially accelerates the timetable for that purification.
Okay, so it's part of the purification process, not a negative side effect if handled correctly with guidance.
That's how it's framed. So addressing these common misconceptions really helps set the record straight and ensures that seekers approach Kriya Yoga with the appropriate understanding, respect for the tradition's guidelines, and realistic expectations.
Very helpful clarifications.
Okay.
So we've talked about the past, the lineage, the techniques. What about Kriya Yoga today? How accessible is it now following Lahiri Mahasaya's command to spread it?
Well, following that pivotal command, the Kriya science has indeed spread globally, primarily through the various authentic lineages stemming from the Lahiri Mahasaya that we discussed.
So it is available worldwide now.
It is, and while the core technique is carefully passed down, the diversification we see today into different organizations and slightly different approaches is often viewed not as a dilution or corruption, but actually as a necessary adaptation.
Adaptation to what?
Adapting the presentation and the preparatory path to meet the diverse temperaments, the different cultural contexts, and the specific needs of modern seekers all around the world. The way you teach someone in rural India in the 1880s might be different from how you teach someone in urban America or Europe today.
Makes sense. Different strokes for different folks.
Kind of. The branching is seen as healthy adaptation, allowing the core science to reach more people effectively, rather than necessarily being a watering down.
Okay. Your source material provided a helpful overview of some of the major organizations today that serve as conduits, as channels, for accessing authentic Kriya Yoga initiation and training. Can we briefly touch on those?
Yes, absolutely. These represent some of the most well-known, distinct yet related paths stemming from that same source, Lahiri Mahasaya. It gives you an idea of the landscape. First, probably the largest and most widely known internationally, is Self-Realization Fellowship Yogoda Satsanga Society of India, SRFYSS.
Founded by Yogananda.
Exactly. They offer a very highly structured, graduated path to Kriya. Access is primarily gained through enrolling in their home study lessons.
Lessons you study at home.
Yes. There's a mandatory preliminary period, typically lasting around 8 to 12 months, sometimes longer, where students dedicate themselves to studying the SRFYSS teachings and, crucially, practicing those preparatory techniques we detailed. The energization exercises, the Hong-Sau concentration technique, and the ALOM meditation technique.
The acclimatization period.
Precisely. It serves as that essential period of acclimatization and foundation building. Only after completing this preparatory phase can a student formally apply for Kriya Yoga initiation.
And is initiation guaranteed?
Application requires accepting certain principles and making a sacred pledge, which establishes a formal guru-disciple relationship with Paramahansa Yogananda and the lineage of SRFYSS gurus. Initiation is then given periodically at SRF temples or centers around the world. The organization itself is led by a monastic board of directors, and the lessons themselves are considered sacred and are provided confidentially only to enrolled students.
Okay. Structured, confidential lessons, monastic leadership, formal pledge. Got it. What's another major one?
Another significant organization is Ananda Sangha, also known as Ananda Village or Ananda Church of Self-Realization.
Founded by Swami Kriyananda.
Yes, who was, as mentioned, a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda for many years. Ananda's approach is often described as being perhaps more community-based. They have established several residential spiritual communities, often called World Brotherhood colonies, where monastics and householders live and practice together.
Community focus. How do they teach Kriya?
Their path to Kriya initiation is also progressive and structured, typically taking about a year or so. It usually involves taking a series of structured courses, which are available both in person at their centers and also online. These courses cover the preparatory techniques, which are very similar to SRF's, Raja Yoga philosophy, and principles of discipleship.
Courses rather than home study lessons.
Generally, yes, though there's home study involved too. Initiation into Kriya Yoga is then given by authorized Kriyacharyas within Ananda, individuals who were ordained and empowered to initiate by Swami Kriyananda, who himself stated he was authorized by Yogananda to do so.
Okay. And the sources mentioned a legal history.
Yes, there was a historical legal case between SRF and Ananda regarding the use of Yogananda's name and teachings, which ultimately affirmed Ananda's right to teach Kriya Yoga and use Yogananda's name in connection with their work. Ananda tends to have more openly accessible resources and information available publicly regarding their path structure and teachings compared to the confidential nature of the SRF lessons.
Okay, Ananda, community-based courses, slightly more open structure. What else?
Then there's the Bihar School of Yoga.
Bihar School. How does that fit in?
This was founded by Swami Satyananda Saraswati, who was a prominent disciple of the great Swami Sivananda of Rishikesh. This lineage traces its Kriya connection back to Babaji, but through a different line via Swami Sivananda.
Okay, different branch from Lahiri Mahasaya's direct line.
Yes, related, but distinct. They teach a very distinct and incredibly comprehensive system of yoga, often drawing heavily from the Tantra Shastras. Their system includes a large number of different techniques, also called Kriyas, but in a broader sense than just the specific pranayama. They might teach over 70 different Kriyas, although perhaps about 20 are commonly taught in their courses.
Wow, 70 Kriyas. How do they teach them?
Unlike some other Kriya lineages that keep the specific techniques confidential until initiation, the Bihar school has extensively published their teachings and detailed practice instructions in numerous widely available books, like their famous A Systematic Course in the Ancient Tantric Techniques of Yoga and Kriya.
So you can learn their Kriyas from books.
The information is publicly available in great detail, yes. However, access to their full Kriya system typically involves undertaking intensive, often multi-year sadhana spiritual practice training programs, usually expected only after the student has established a strong foundation in Hatha and Raja Yoga according to their system. So, while the info is out there, proper training is still emphasized.
Okay, Bihar school. Sivananda lineage, tantric influence, many Kriyas, published material. intensive training focus. One more major one mentioned.
Yes, the Kriya Yoga Institute.
Kriya Yoga Institute. Who founded that?
This institute was founded by Paramahansa Yogananda, who, as we noted, traced his lineage back through Swami Satyananda Giri, who was another direct disciple of Swami Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru. So it comes through the same grandparent guru, Sri Yukteswar, but via a different disciple.
Ah, another branch from Sri Yukteswar. What's their emphasis?
Their emphasis is often placed very strongly on the importance of direct transmission from a living master, a living guru. Initiation is typically given through quite a detailed ceremonial process, often involving specific purification rites, and generally requires the student's physical attendance at a scheduled program or retreat led by the guru or senior authorized teacher, Kriyacharya.
Emphasis on the living guru and ceremonial initiation in person.
That seems to be a key focus. They offer public lectures, introductory programs, and formal Kriya initiations worldwide, with the presence and direct blessing of the guru or a senior authorized representative being central to their approach.
Okay, so Kriya Yoga Institute, Sri Yukteswar lineage via Yogananda, focus on living guru transmission, ceremonial initiation and programs. That gives a good sense of the different flavors.
It does. So just to summarize the comparison briefly based on the source table, you have differences in the founder and primary lineage path. Yogananda, Kriyananda Yogananda, Sakyananda Sivananda, Hariyananda Sri Yukteswar, different methods for the preparatory path and initiation, confidential home study lessons versus open courses versus intensive tantric training versus guru-led programs, varying lengths for the typical preparation period, and slightly different key emphasis like preservation of the original teachings versus community living versus integral yoga tantra approach versus direct transmission from a living master.
But all aiming for the same core goal.
Exactly. These variations are seen as serving the diverse needs, temperaments, and learning styles of different seekers in the modern world. They are different valid expressions and pathways leading towards the same underlying truth and goal of self-realization through Kriya Yoga, all stemming ultimately from that same source initiated by Babaji and Lahiri Mahasaya.
Okay, that paints a really clear picture of the modern landscape. Thank you. So let's try to bring this deep dive to a close now and maybe summarize the key takeaways from everything we've explored.
Sounds good. It's been a lot of information.
It has. So Kriya Yoga, as presented in the sources you provided, really emerges as this profound, ancient, yet strikingly relevant spiritual science. It's multifaceted.
Definitely. It's clearly not just a single technique you tack on, but a comprehensive, integrated path towards the highest goal of human existence, self-realization. And it was specifically revived and adapted for the modern age through this guided lineage of remarkable masters.
And the core principle, the engine driving it, seems both simple in concept and profound in its implications.
Absolutely. It boils down to this. By gaining conscious scientific control over the fundamental life force, the prana, the practitioner, can naturally and effectively still the restless mind.
Which then leads to?
Stilling the mind allows you to systematically neutralize the limiting effects of past karma stored within your system, and ultimately to awaken higher states of consciousness, leading directly to that experiential union with spirit.
It's the direct route, the airplane route, precisely because it works with the root energy that drives our entire psychophysical system and consciousness.
Perfectly summarized. That's the central claim.
And we traced its fascinating history from its assertion as an ancient science potentially known to figures like Krishna, Patanjali, and even Christ.
Right, emphasizing its universality.
Through its dramatic reemergence in 1861 with Mahavatar Babaji initiating Lahiri Mahasaya.
The pivotal moment.
And its subsequent careful transmission and global spread through the succeeding masters like Swami Sri Yukteswar and Paramahansa Yogananda, who specifically adapted it for accessibility to modern householders living active lives all around the world.
A journey from ancient secrecy to modern global availability.
And today, as we just discussed, There are these diverse yet authentic organizations diligently working to preserve and propagate this sacred science, offering different structures and avenues for sincere seekers worldwide to receive proper initiation and guidance on this powerful path.
The accessibility that Babaji ordained is now a reality.
So ultimately, the path of Kriya Yoga, as it's described so thoroughly in your sources, seems to be this potent synthesis. It requires both sides of the coin.
Yes, it clearly requires disciplined, consistent self-effort from the practitioner in correctly applying the specific techniques learned through initiation. You have to do the work.
But that's combined with
What's presented as the indispensable element of divine grace and the crucial guidance, protection, and subtle energetic transmission received from a true, qualified guru and the connection to the unbroken lineage. You need both effort and grace.
human effort meets divine assistance.
Exactly. It is this blend, this synergy of dedicated human endeavor and reliance on divine assistance that seems to define Kriya Yoga as a true royal science, a uniquely potent and direct means for achieving that ultimate goal. Conscious, blissful, liberating union with the divine spirit, the state of ultimate freedom and lasting happiness.
Wow. That truly was a deep dive into a complex, profound, and really fascinating spiritual science. Thank you so much for bringing this incredibly rich source material to us and letting us explore it together like this.
My pleasure. It certainly leaves you with a lot to reflect upon, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And maybe that leads to a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. If controlling the life force, the prana, is presented as such a direct path to achieving inner peace, freedom from karma, and ultimately union with spirit, it raises a practical question for you. What aspects of your own life force, maybe just your energy levels throughout the day, the quality of your breath, the focus of your attention, what aspects could you perhaps become just a little more conscious of, maybe starting today, as even a tiny first step towards greater inner awareness or mastery?
That's a great point. Or perhaps how might simply understanding this ancient science of energy control, this different perspective, maybe change how you view or approach any meditative, breathing, or even physical exercise practices you might already be doing. Or perhaps considering exploring some food for thought as you integrate these ideas.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks again for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next one.